Their uncle ignored the question. So everyone has forgotten about me? Not everyone, Granny continued. Mira and Mr. Canis remember you. Mom, Mr. Canis is dead, Uncle Jake reminded her. Granny flinched, but then regained her composure. And Baba Yaga, of course, the old woman continued. Baba Yaga, well, that's just great. A mentally deranged cannibal who collects human bones still remembers me. How did I get so lucky? Uncle Jake left the room, snatched his overcoat from the hall closet, and opened the front door. Where are you going? Granny Rhoda asked. To warm up the car, he called. Get your coats, girls, and try not to forget all about me before you get outside. He stomped out and slammed the door behind him. The girls stared at his grandmother, but she wouldn't meet their eyes. Puck snuck in late last night. Sabrina, run up and invite him along. I'm sure he's feeling a bit left out. Sabrina wanted to know more about what her Uncle Jake had done, but Granny Rhoda had an increasingly familiar expression on her face. The old woman didn't want to talk. The last person in the world whom Sabrina wanted to invite anywhere was Puck. She reluctantly climbed the steps and knocked on his door several times, but there was no answer. She pushed it open and inspected the ground for catapults, bear traps, secret levers, and stink bombs. The coast seemed clear, so she stepped inside. She called out for the prankster, but there was no response. After a couple more shouts, she decided to give up. Just then, there was a pop. A stream of fire and smoke rose high into the sky and exploded into 1,000 multicolored lights, followed by an ear-shaking boom. Moments later, another trail of smoke whistled into the sky. The fireworks seemed to be coming from over a hill beyond the lagoon. The path up the hill was littered with broken toys and melted army men, shattered marbles, stretched out slinkies, and heads of some hungry hippos were scattered everywhere. At the end of the path was a clearing where Sabrina found Puck sitting on a jewel-encrusted throne wearing his military medals. His chimpanzee army crowded around him, all reaching for a box of matches Puck held in his hands as the boy lectured them on the art of war. Johnson, step up here, he said. One of the chimps stepped out of the crowd and approached the boy. Johnson, the enemy is everywhere. You might even have to kill one of your own men if you were to discover that they were sympathetic to the enemy's cause. Could you take out your best friend if you had to? The chimp smiled widely, nodded, and clapped his hands. Johnson, you're a good soldier, Puck said. He lit a match and handed it to the furry creature. The lucky chimp raced over to a collection of fireworks of all shapes and sizes. Johnson lit the biggest red and white striped rocket of the bunch and screamed with glee as it whistled into the air and exploded in the sky. When the lights and noise were gone, the chimps hopped up and down in front of Puck and begged to be the recipient of the next match. Sullivan, front and center, Puck commanded. Tell me the first rule of war. The monkey screamed and stomped its feet. That's right, Sullivan. Kill or be killed, Puck replied, handing him a match. Soon another rocket was flying overhead. What do you want? Puck said when he spotted Sabrina. Somebody's in a bad mood, she taunted, stepping over several expired bottle rockets. I'm not in a bad mood, Puck said. I'm busy turning these maggots into fighting machines. The chimpanzees turned to him, baring teeth and screaming impatiently for another match. Puck's head suddenly morphed into that of a chimp as well, and he hissed and spat at them. The chimps quieted and then went right back to begging for matches. The only thing keeping you busy is your pouting, Sabrina remarked. I'm not pouting. Well, something's wrong. There are donuts in the dining room. Normally you'd have already wolfed them all down and finished by licking the box. Who cares about donuts? I don't even like donuts, Puck said. You like everything. I've seen you eat Elvis's kibble right out of his bowl. There was a long pause. Are they glazed? He asked. Yes, Uncle Jake bought them, Sabrina said. I don't want anything from him. Why don't you like him? He's hugging the old lady just 'cause he's her real son, Puck replied. She hasn't seen him in 12 years, Puck, Sabrina explained. Why do you care anyway? I don't. Good. Good. There was a long silence. If you must know, I've been insulted, Puck said. By who? By all of you, Puck cried. I have an impeccable reputation as a scoundrel. I have been banned by thousands of hamlets, hundreds of cities, dozens of countries, and 3 different dimensions. There are bounties on my head all over the planet, and on a few planets you've never heard of. And I'm Puck, Trickster King. I'm the mean and nasty emperor of pranksters. I'm the boy hero to nations of snickering layabouts. My kingdom is the wrong side of the tracks. So? Puck snarled. So I threw it all away to protect this family, and not one of you appreciates it. I'm ruined, and you have all turned your back on me for Uncle Jake. He'll save the family, blah, blah, blah. Oh, stop being such a baby. Of course we care about you. Everyone cares about you, Sabrina said. You care about me? Don't let it go into your head, gas bag. You're in love with me. I knew it. Gross. You want me to be your boyfriend, don't you? Puck taunted. His wings suddenly popped out of his back, and he swooped over to Sabrina. Before she knew how to react, the boy kissed her on the lips. A million thoughts ran through Sabrina's head at once. Puck was annoying. He had dumped her in that a disgusting glob. He'd put creepy crawlers in her bed. But the most awful thought of them all was the one about the kiss. It was nice. The two separated and stared at each other for a long time. Puck grinned and broke the silence. I believe the words you are searching for are thank you. And then Sabrina punched him in the belly. Puck hunched over, gasping for breath. You try that again, you little freak, and you're going to need a dentist, Sabrina shouted. She turned and stomped back down the path. We're going out with Uncle Jake. Granny says you have to go. We're waiting in the car. Sabrina found the door to Puck's room, opened it, and slammed it behind her. She leaned against the wall, feeling her hot embarrassment on her face. Ever since she had started noticing boys, she had dreamed about her first kiss. She had imagined it would occur on the beach or in a flower garden with a nice boy who really liked her. She had never once, not even in her worst nightmares, thought the boy would be Puck. She couldn't believe her first kiss had been from a dirty, smelly ever after, surrounded by a bunch of screaming chimpanzee pyromaniacs. She rushed to the bathroom to see if her face looked different. Would anyone be able to tell what she and Puck had just done? She turned the water on, ran some soap over a washcloth, and scrubbed her face. When she was finished, her skin was as raw as when she had tried to scrub off Puck's mustache and goatee. She still looked flushed and embarrassed. By the time Sabrina got back downstairs, Daphne was tapping her foot by the door. Where's Puck? The little girl asked. He's coming, Sabrina said as she snatched her coat from the closet. Did you two kiss and make up? Daphne asked. Though she couldn't see it, Sabrina was sure her face was as red as a tomato. Come on, Uncle Jake is waiting, she said, and hurried outside with Daphne at her heels. Uncle Jake was leaning against the family's rusty old jalopy. It hadn't moved an inch since Mr. Candace had died. Puck came out of the house to join them, and when the boy fairy got close enough, Uncle Jake extended his hand. Glad to have you along, Puck, he said sincerely. The boy sneered at the man and crawled into the back seat of the car. The girls followed, and the ancient car's shock absorbers groaned with complaint. Seeing Uncle Jake behind the wheel where Mr. Candace usually sat was strange to Sabrina. But when Uncle Jake inserted the key, something even stranger happened. The car didn't backfire. Every other time the girls had been in the car, it had started with an ear-shattering explosion that could be heard across town. Now it rumbled softly like a brand new automobile. Sabrina saw her own surprise reflected in her sister's face. How do you do that? Daphne said. I have a way with women, Uncle Jake said, caressing the dusty dashboard. Besides, this is my car. I left it here when I skipped town. Your father and I got into a lot of trouble in this car." He soon put the car in reverse and backed it out into the street, and soon they were tooling through the back roads of Fairport Landing. What Sabrina had always thought of as the world's dullest town took on a whole new light when her uncle talked about it. Every mailbox, abandoned house, graffiti-covered bridge, and broken window had a story. The more the girls heard, the more it became clear that Uncle Jake and their straight-faced father had been first-class juvenile delinquents. As interesting as all the stories were, Sabrina found herself especially interested in the ones that had a magical element. The boys had cast a gigantic spell on the three blind mice and watched them stagger around the town. They had poured a rusting potion onto the Tin Woodsman and even found a way to give the old woman who lived in a shoe and her 1,000 kids athlete's foot. Jake and her father had done it all, which made Puck's dislike of her uncle all the more puzzling. After all, the two had so much in common. Uncle Jake's stories were filled with mischief, but Puck was clearly unimpressed. He sat in the back seat with his arms crossed, acting as if he weren't paying attention. Sabrina and Daphne, on the other hand, had a wonderful time. Even the "A Vote for Heart is a Vote for Change" signs that had sprung up all over town couldn't cast a shadow on the trip. After a couple hours of sightseeing, Uncle Jake made a turn that led up to the mountains. They drove for some time, then made a left on an abandoned gravel path and parked the car near a clearing. "What are we doing here?" Daphne asked as everyone got out of the car. "I have to admit that this walk down memory lane was all just a trick to get you girls out of the house," Uncle Jake replied, leading the children to the center of the open field. "Mom doesn't want you two messing with this stuff in the Hall of Wonders, but I have a few goodies of my own. I'm going to teach you to use some of them. Puck, would you like to learn something too?" Puck sneered. "I know all I'm gonna." Uncle Jake dug in his pockets and produced his wand of Merlin. He handed it to Daphne, but she refused to take it. Her uncle was surprised. "Wouldn't you like to have something they can use to save your mom and dad and keep you and your sister safe? Your grandmother never has to know." Daphne shook her head. "No, thank you." Uncle Jake frowned and handed the wand to Sabrina. As soon as she touched it, she felt this familiar charge run through her body. It was exhilarating. "Looks like you're going to be the hero of this family. Okay, the name of the game with a magic wand is control. You want to be able to aim and concentrate all at once, because the thing about monsters is they don't wait until you're ready. So every time you point this thing, know what you want or someone could get hurt." Sabrina nodded, doing her best to avoid Daphne's disapproving glare. "So you've seen how it works for garland and tinsel," Uncle Jake sighed. "Let's try something with a little more punch. Let's pretend those trees over there are a Jabberwocky. We need something really big to knock a Jabberwocky down. It could be anything, but let's try lightning. To get some lightning, think about the worst thunderstorm you've ever seen. A really scary one with fierce wind and rain." Sabrina closed her eyes to imagine the scenario and immediately remembered the night after her parents had disappeared. There had been a terrible thunderstorm right outside of their apartment windows. The girls had slept in their room in their mom and dad's bed, hoping they'd come home soon. They never did. "Now aim and say, 'Give me some lightning.'" When Sabrina opened her eyes, that same thunderstorm was building in the sky above her. There was static energy in the air that caused the hair on her arms to rise. She felt supercharged, like she was filled with enough power to do anything she could imagine, like there was nothing that could hurt her. All of her fears and worries about Red Riding Hood and the Jabberwocky faded away, and for the first time in a year and a half, she felt calm and confident. It was a sensation so incredible, she wondered if there was a way to feel it all the time. It seems like this is going to be the end of this video. I'll send you later. Goodbye.